Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, before we get on with today's Brexit extravaganza, let's talk about the other big political story of the day. That's the news that the head of the Labour Party's disputes panel, she's a woman called Christine Shawcroft, has quit after it emerged that she opposed the suspension of a council candidate accused of Holocaust denial. It comes as Jeremy Corbyn is promising to root out the problem within Labour. Here's the Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, speaking earlier.
We've said, Jeremy Corbyn has said to the new General Secretary, who starts on Tuesday, your first task is to bring forward an action plan with a timetable in which we will deal with this issue, and we'll deal with it in consultation with the Jewish community. We will eradicate anti-Semitism in our party, and we'll go on to be the leading party that will seek to eradicate it in our society.
Well, that was John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor. We're joined here in the studio by Sam Coates from The Times. He's the journalist behind the story which led to Christine Shawcroft's departure. And we should start by saying that we've been in touch with her, but she didn't want to come onto the show. Sam, welcome to The Daily Politics. Who is Christine Shawcroft and why is she so important?
Christine Shawcroft is a close ally of Jeremy Corbyn. She was a director of Momentum. She was the person that Jeremy Corbyn parachuted in just 2 months ago to oversee, to chair the panel that referees on complaints about members of the Labour Party. Now, we've heard this week about all of these allegations of anti-Semitism against a large number of Labour members. They all go to a thing called the disputes panel, and she was in charge. So her views on this subject are absolutely critical and speak to, it is seen by a lot of Labour figures, the attitude of the leadership on anti-Semitism, which is why what we found out yesterday is so critical. Right,
so why did she resign?
So yesterday we got hold of an email from her written last Sunday in which she was trying to undo the suspension of an individual Labour council candidate in the upcoming elections who had posted articles suggesting that the Holocaust was a hoax. Now, she made a series of arguments why frankly, the Labour Party should undo that suspension for now. She said he was a great campaigning candidate. He might win the seat. This was just part of some wider factional dispute within the Labour Party, as it were, not acknowledging the gravity of the issue. And you can see screenshots of some of the things that were posted. He says, Alan Bull says those screenshots were doctored, but doesn't dispute posting them. I think it caused a lot of concern. Now, we went to the Labour Party, said, we've got hold of this email. It says in black and white terms, Christine Shawcroft doesn't want to see him suspended for all of these reasons, not apparently taking sufficient account of the anti-Semitism accusation. And about 3 hours later, the Labour Party came back to us and said Christine Shawcroft is standing down as chair of this disputes panel. So there is an acknowledgement that she couldn't go on having said these things. But she remains very close to Jeremy Corbyn. She remains part of Labour's ruling national executive, despite admitting that she made mistakes on this. And I think people are very upset still today about everything that's gone on.
We have a statement from Christine Shawcroft where she says, I sent this email before being aware of the full information about this case, and I had not been shown the image of his abhorrent Facebook post. Had I seen this image, I would not have requested that the decision to suspend him be reconsidered. I am deeply sorry for having done so. Should she be taken off the NEC, Labour's ruling executive?
She should. It's an elected position and it's up to her now to consider her position on that. It is right that she stepped down as chair of the disputes panel. She's supposed to be impartial and fair and kicking out the anti-Semites from our party, not defending Holocaust denial. Jeremy has been very clear that he wants zero tolerance of anti-Semitism in our party, and this is a litmus test, I think, of that zero tolerance. I think she should stand down, and I think it's deeply problematic that when she knew she was going to be having this individual in front of her, that her instinct, instead of looking into the claims of anti-Semitism, which is what he'd been referred for, is to immediately side with him and say what a great guy he is. That's a huge problem.
Would you like Jeremy Corbyn to instruct that she is removed from the NEC?
I think he should, and I think it's a very important litmus test of Jeremy's commitment to zero tolerance that he promised in the letter to the Board of Deputies. He must act to take her off the National Executive Committee. It's problematic, she's elected, it's difficult, but all of this is difficult, and it is a really important symbol of the cultural change. This is not, we've got pockets of anti-Semites in our party, and the time for them to be kicked out is now. It's been over the last 2 years as well.
All right, Mary Cray very clear on what she wants to happen, and Louise Ellman has also said something very similar. There was a tweet from a former member of Labour's national ruling executive, Joanna Baxter, who says, I sat across the NEC table from Christine for 6 years. Sadly, this is not unusual behaviour from her. Stepping down as chair of disputes is not sufficient. Ignorance is no excuse. Is she still on the disputes panel?
Well, that's a very interesting point, and we're trying to get to the bottom of that. Given that she's maintaining her seat on the NEC, it does seem that she'll have some role overseeing disputes anyway. I think the Labour Party are going to make a lot of her standing down from the chairmanship. But if she has any role at all, I suspect there'll be great concern amongst the vast majority of Labour MPs that Jeremy Corbyn hasn't been tough enough.
Right, thank you very much. James Cleverly, Jeremy Corbyn now very clear, adamant that he is going to root out anti-Semitism and deal with this.
Well, words are all well and good, but really I think now, speaking to a lot of people, both in the Labour Party as we do in Parliament, and speaking to members of the Jewish community, they have heard these words over and over again. There was a report in June 2016, Baroness Chakrabarti drafted a report basically saying nothing to see here, move along. Yeah, the time for words has passed. I think the Labour leader really must take action now if he has any chance of restoring confidence in the Labour Party's willingness to tackle anti-Semitism. Right,
but, you know, when it comes to these kinds of issues, the Conservatives, you can hardly claim the moral high ground. Let's take a look at this leaflet produced by local Tories in the outer borough, London outer borough of Havering, and have a look at some of the things that are written on there. I don't know, James, whether you've actually seen it, but it says things like Labour's shocking plan to change Romford for good. Mayor Khan, Sadiq Khan, and Jeremy Corbyn's men are desperate to grab power in our town hall, so get ready for massive population increases from London, vast numbers in high-rise blocks of flats, a London crime wave with even less police, our cherished Union Jack flag being taken down, back to Labour's political correctness. Well, if this isn't dog whistle politics, what is it?
I'm not sure if you're equating that to anti-Semitism.
No, I'm saying, what do you see when you read that?
No, I did see that. I represented an outer London borough, and lots of people in outer London have concerns about high population densities, tall buildings. I think this was sloppily worded, but we have brought in, the Conservative Party has a respect pledge, which we implemented in this instance. The people involved apologised for the offence that was caused. The leaflet was withdrawn, so we took immediate action and made it very, very clear that whether this, you know, as I believe it was inadvertent, we deal with it.
You think it was inadvertent? I mean, Nick Bowles, your colleague, has said the letter is disgraceful. He's tweeted this. The individuals responsible should apologise and withdraw it or face disciplinary action. We cannot attack Corbyn for indulging anti-Semitism in Labour and allow messages like this to go unchallenged. So Brandon Lewis, your colleague, over to you.
Yeah, so Joe, we saw this on Monday. By the end of Monday, the leaflet had been withdrawn and the individuals had apologised.
The leaflet's been withdrawn, but hasn't it gone out, though, already?
Well, so in some parts it's gone out. You can't undeliver a leaflet, but the leaflet was withdrawn and the individuals apologised. And that's the difference. We have a respect pledge, which means that we can quickly get a grip of situations like this, and I think that is the big difference. Sometimes errors of judgment and mistakes are made, and the difference is how you deal with those things. And as a party, we've dealt with them decisively and quickly.
All right, thank you, and thank you, Sam, for coming in.
Now, Jeremy Corbyn says prejudice and harassment against Jewish people has no place whatsoever in the Labour Party. It comes after one Labour Party official, Christine Shawcroft, stood down from the party's disputes committee after it emerged she'd given her backing to a party member accused of Holocaust denial. Now, in a letter to Labour members, Jeremy Corbyn says it's important to develop a deeper understanding of what constitutes anti-Semitism. He says often it takes familiar forms, but newer forms of anti-Semitism have also appeared, sometimes woven into criticisms of the action of Israeli governments. Support for justice for the Palestinian people should provide no one with the excuse to insult, harass or encourage hatred of Jewish people? OK, well, does the left have a problem with anti-Semitism? Let's talk to Aaron Bastani, co-founder of Novara Media, and Oliver Cam, columnist for The Times. Good to see you both, gents, this afternoon. Aaron, can I start with you in all this? What's your position, actually, your view on where the Labour Party is on this very, very dangerous topic?
Yeah, so first off, I think it's indisputable that the mural in question was anti-Semitic. The trope of 6 elderly men, I think, playing a game of Monopoly on the backs of the global working class. Above them, a Masonic symbol. Next to them, somebody with a placard talking about the New World Order. So this anti-Semitic trope was situated within a sort of broader melange of conspiratorial, often internet-based nonsense. It has no place in the Labour Party. But what it tells me is something quite important, and this actually goes beyond the Labour Party. I want to apologise and be contrite for everything that's happened. But more broadly, I think there's a bigger issue here, which is that most Brits, this is at least my opinion, would look at that mural and say, well, why is that anti-Semitic? And as Jeremy Corbyn laid out in that email, I think correctly, we really need to identify and isolate and then try and change attitudes to around quite quotidian, often under-examined forms of anti-Semitism.
So in that sense, Oliver, I mean, is the reading from that we're being too picky, too pernickety over this?
No, there is little doubt in my mind that anti-Semitism is not a huge problem in modern Britain. The problem is that there's a much greater incidence of this most virulent and ancient of hatreds in politics, and specifically in the Labour Party, and specifically in the circle around Jeremy Corbyn.
So why is that? Why is that in your view?
In my view, it's because there is a long-standing suspicion of the mere existence of Jewish people in certain parts of the far left. The idea that whereas the socialist utopia unites people, assimilates them, regardless of their ostensible differences with the abolition of capitalism, the Jewish people retain this stubborn attachment to their linguistic, cultural and national traditions. And I have, as a journalist, no particular interest in the fortunes of Judaism, but I have a passionate interest in the survival, the flourishing, and the thriving of the Jewish people. And Mr. Corbyn, in a party that has deep links historically with Anglo-Jewry, appears neither interested nor concerned in that issue.
Well, that's quite a statement, Aaron.
Well, I mean, I would disagree. Karl Marx himself was Jewish, I'd like to remind your viewers. So was Leon Trotsky. A number of major figures throughout the history of the left in the 19th and 20th centuries were Jewish. John Lanzmann, of course, a very prominent figure with the Momentum, happens to be a Jewish man. But at the same time, I would agree that there is clearly something here which is changing. The Labour Party has, I think, tripled, quadrupled its party membership in the last couple of years. And up until 2015, the radical left didn't really have an anchor in society more broadly. And where I disagree with Oliver is that I think actually very many people have become attracted to conspiracy theories, be it the New World Order or the Illuminati. And yes, these reproduce anti-Semitic tropes. Sadly, and I would say this is where the left has failed, myself included, too often that's sort of leaked into the Labour Party as its membership's really expanded, and we've not isolated it and called it out for what it was. And clearly that now needs to change.
What do we make? I mean, let's talk of Christine Shawcroft, if we could. I mean, she's stood down from the party's disputes committee. She's not been sort of suspended from the party per se, has she? But I mean, she defended someone with, and then came back and said, well, actually, I haven't seen the Facebook message that they were talking about. So she defended someone without looking at any of the evidence. It was clearly a concerning statement that had been made on Facebook. Now she's stood down but not being suspended. Surely, Aaron, that would be a strong message to take, to actually suspend her from the NEC.
Well, I'm a big fan of due process. I'm a big fan of rules. I think very many more people should have been expelled and suspended from the Labour Party. I would include Ken Livingstone in that category, by the way.
Right.
But the point is, in order for due process to work, it has to be thorough, it has to be clear. That hasn't happened so far. In the case of Christine Shawcroft, I'm not going to speak on her behalf. I think you should invite her here and ask that precise question. what I understand from that matter is clearly the post in question is disgusting. The man who is going to stand as a councillor should not be in the Labour Party. He needs to have been expelled yesterday. But in terms of what Christine Shawcroft was privy to, I've heard multiple accounts. One person told me she had seen it and discarded. That was kind of implied in the Times. Another has said that she didn't see the post. She took the word of another official within the Labour Party and said, oh, that sounds OK. This sounds like local politicking. So I'm not going to ventriloquise Christine because that's unfair. I believe in due process. I believe in equality under the law. But if the worst accounts from this incident are true, then yes, clearly she should no longer be an elected official in the party. She has questions to answer in regard to the entire thing and her status as a Labour Party member.
I mean, this is what I find a little bit confusing, Oliver, in all of this. That we get these, arguments, as Aaron is making, saying, well, there needs to be due process and then strong action. We're getting pretty strong words from people like Jeremy Corbyn, and yet when it comes to people like Christine Shawcroft and even Ken Livingstone, we're not actually seeing a lot of that very firm action, are we?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? It's like McCavity, the cat who was never there. Jeremy Corbyn, looking at the mural that Aaron himself described quite accurately, cannot recognise anti-Semitism when he is literally looking straight at it. In the case of Christine Shawcroft, how can we even be, due process is one thing, but how can we even be considering this as a matter of, on the one hand or the other? Holocaust denial is, of all conspiracy theories, the most pernicious and evil. The notion that the Holocaust, the genocide of 6 million Jews, is a hoax concocted by international jury to extract reparations from Germany is deranged and monstrous. And yet, the head of disciplinary procedures of the national executive of a historic political party with deep roots in Anglo Jewry interpreted this in a trivial way to do with internal party politics. And British Jews are rightly incredulous and outraged at what is happening.
OK, Oliver, I mean, that incredulity is reflected through a lot of posts we're seeing online, a lot of comment from Jewish organisations. So it's one thing to be critical. How do you see a move forward for Labour in all of this? I mean, there's a bit of a mea culpa from Jeremy Corbyn, but what actually is going to be needed to heal those relations?
He's got to be absolutely candid about his insouciance, not only in the 3 years since he's been, 2.5 years since he's been Labour leader, but in his entire political history. Labour leaders in the past, Hugh Gaitskell, Harold Wilson, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, have instinctively understood British Jewry, its concerns and its values. And Jeremy Corbyn has a history of talking to insular, isolated and frankly extreme groups without understanding much about history, without understanding much about the Middle East, without understanding much about the Jewish people. And he's got to look at his own record, look at himself, and ask himself how he's got into this position and how he has tarnished the image, the idea, the values of a political party that to this day I nominally support but will not vote for under this leader.
OK, look, gents, we need to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed. If you've got any views on that, I would love to hear from you this afternoon at Sky Stephen on Twitter.
The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has written to MPs to say the party has a zero-tolerance policy on anti-Semitism. His email followed the resignation of the head of the party's disputes panel, who had opposed the suspension of a council candidate accused of sharing an anti-Semitic article on Facebook. Christine Shawcroft remains a member of Labour's ruling body, the National Executive Committee. A number of Labour MPs have called on Mr Corbyn to remove her. Our deputy political editor, John Pienaar, reports.
Off to another tough day at work.
Good morning.
And no time to talk.
Good morning. Good morning.
Jeremy Corbyn's critics say he's not saying or doing enough to fight anti-Semitism in his party. Today there's no escaping this row.
Oh, Jeremy's a racist!
This is what an internal row looks like out in the open. This week, Jewish demonstrators accusing the leadership of failing to confront anti-Semitism on one side.
This is political.
Excuse me.
It is not political.
On the other, Jewish protesters condemning that demo as anti-Corbyn treachery. Some of the Labour MPs who turned up demanding more action against anti-Semitism are being called to account now by their local parties. And now a new row. Christine Shawcroft quit as chair of Labour's disputes panel after it came out she'd opposed the suspension of a council candidate accused of Holocaust denial. Angry MPs want her off Labour's executive too, despite her apology. She said if she'd known the full facts, I would not have requested the decision to suspend him be reconsidered. I'm deeply sorry. Labour's Shadow Chancellor admits the anti-Semitism controversy could hurt Labour's chances of winning power.
We want to eradicate anti-Semitism wherever we find it. It is not going to exist within the Labour Party. We will be ruthless about that.
Jeremy's sincere in being against anti-Semitism and understanding what it is. The question is he brave enough to take on his own backers, his own allies, because they're the people causing this problem, and get rid of some of them. That's never easy, taking on people who claim they're close to you and who are using your name. But he has to do that. He has to deliver if he's going to be believed and therefore seen to be sincere.
Mr Corbyn's new, devoted followers are his strength. He wants to show unity ahead of the local elections. But today, in an email to members, he's had to promise zero tolerance of anti-Semitism. Some are blaming, among others, far-left members and factions, vociferous supporters of Palestine, fierce opponents of Israel, who came into the party fold when Jeremy Corbyn took the leadership against all the odds. They may be loyal supporters of their leader, but they're also hurting him and his party. John Pienaar, BBC News, Westminster.
The Labour Party was already dealing with charges of anti-Semitism over the weekend, so it is strange that the person in charge of the party's disputes panel wrote an email on Sunday defending a Labour council candidate in Peterborough who posted on Facebook an article calling the Holocaust a hoax. Christine Shawcroft's email was leaked to the Daily Mail and she resigned. She said she'd erred in making a judgment about the man without looking at what he'd posted. Well, Jeremy Corbyn faces continuing criticism for not taking the problem of anti-Semitism seriously enough. The argument is just simply not going away. John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, went on the defence today.
We've been angry this week because we thought we put in place with the Chakrabarti report and the decision to set up a legal panel to advise us all through this, we thought that was under implementation. It hasn't been implemented in the way that we wanted or speedily enough. So we've said, Jeremy Corbyn has said to the new General Secretary, who starts on Tuesday, your first task is to bring forward an action plan with a timetable in which we will deal with this issue, and we'll deal with it in consultation with the Jewish community. We will eradicate anti-Semitism in our party, and we'll go on to be the leading party that will seek to eradicate in our society.
Well, we did ask the Labour Party to come on and talk about this with us this evening. No one was available, but Lord Levy is with me in the studio. He's a Labour peer, former Middle East envoy. Very good evening to you. You've heard what John McDonnell was saying there. Do you get a sense that the party is ready to get a grip on this?
No, not at all. I don't think the party is really taking this seriously as a zero-tolerance policy. And if I may, I'd like to read something that I received yesterday. I see that you dare to criticise Labour leader. Who the hell are you to comment on Jeremy Corbyn? You are just another Jewish pig bloodsucker living on taxpayers' money. What are you doing in this country anyway? Why don't you piss off to Israel? We don't need Jewish bastards like you in this country.
And that was an email you just, an unsolicited email you got. Do you know who that is from?
I don't.
But you reported it.
This has been reported to
that
the police for them to follow up.
And that would,
Absolutely.
they may or may not follow
Absolutely.
it. But you don't know that that's a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn even. I mean, obviously they say they are, but it's not someone who you could say.
I don't.
Right.
But I know that Jeremy Evan was shown this email last night.
Right. But he would condemn that. You're not suggesting.
Why hasn't he? He saw it last night. He saw it last night. It was shown to him. It was shown to him last night. There's not been a word, Michael, we're so sorry. Michael, that's really just not on.
But he has said a lot of words, in fairness to him.
What has he done?
He's given interviews and he's said...
What has he done in action? He's spoken about taking a stand against anti-Semitism. Has he? Has he said that the lady who has now stood down from one position will now be removed from the NEC? Has he said that? No, he hasn't. You know, I don't want to make this personal against Jeremy Corbyn.
Just one clarification.
Are you quite sure?
Can I just be...
Please.
How do we know Jeremy Corbyn's seen the email out of interest? Because you've said...
Because it was shown to him by the Labour leader of the Lords last night. She told me she showed it to him.
So she showed it
Absolutely.
to him. What I want to know is exactly what you want Jeremy Corbyn to do, because not about your letter, about this email, but about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Because Jeremy Corbyn has said lots of things about anti-Semitism. I can read you some things he said. I mean, he's condemned it, you know, in pretty strong terms. Anti-Semitism is completely wrong. He's called it a cancer. The fight is one that unites us all. So there's no point, is there, in asking him for words? You've got to ask him for something that isn't words. Right.
This
so what
lady didn't look properly at what this gentleman
Christine
from Peterborough
Shawcroft
said.
you're talking
Christine
about.
Shawcroft. Jeremy didn't look properly at that mural. You know, it's enough of this not looking at things properly. They're not deaf, dumb and blind. They need to take this seriously. There has to be a zero-tolerance policy. The two leading Jewish organisations representing the community have written to Jeremy Corbyn asking him for a plan of action. They have specified what they want before they're prepared to hold a meeting. Right. They have not had a response.
Right. And John McDonnell has said, and you heard him there saying,
I did.
The first job of the new General Secretary is come Tuesday, sit down and work out a plan of action, because this is something we need timetable and we need action. And that, I mean, you haven't seen the plan yet because there hasn't been drawn up yet. But they've said Tuesday is that...
OK.
Right.
My answer is this. As I've said, I don't want this to be against my party. No. I don't want it to be against the leader of my party. I want zero tolerance across every political party and the media ever. That is what I want to see. But enough words. They haven't even answered this letter. They are just not taking this seriously. And our community is really in angst about what is going on. I've never received such a disgusting email.
Can I ask you this?
Yes, sir.
Why do you stay in a party led by someone who you think has not dealt with anti-Semitism seriously? I mean, that would surely be for you the kind of the entry qualification into a political party is like, let's not have anti-Semitism and then we'll argue about all the other policies.
Let me answer you. Yeah. I have as much right to be in that party as Jeremy Corbyn.
But he's the leader. It's his party. It's not your party.
It's not his party. It's the party of millions of people who support the Labour Party. He happens to be the leader at the moment. This is not his party. Anyone who supports Labour, votes Labour, they're a shareholder in the party.
So you're staying in the party?
Hold on. They have every right to be in this party. As I've said before, my grandparents, my parents were members of this party. I want to see this party change. I want to see him to take action that is going to make me and many other in the Jewish community feel good about being in Labour. Why should I quit? I want to make change happen. And you make change happen from inside heaven, not from outside.
Lord Levy, you're staying. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Here, Jeremy Corbyn has used his seasonal message to insist that he is the ally of Jewish people in the fight against anti-Semitism. But after an open letter from Labour MPs and peers, Mr Corbyn's critics within the party are saying it's time for action, not words. Here's our political correspondent, Emily Morgan.
He tried to avoid the cameras yesterday and refused to be drawn on the anti-Semitism row engulfing Labour. Today, Jeremy Corbyn used a camera to tackle it directly in his Passover message.
We in the Labour movement will never be complacent about anti-Semitism. We all need to do better. I'm committed to ensuring the Labour Party is a welcoming and secure place for Jewish people.
But words, say some, are not enough. 40 Labour MPs have called for this woman to be suspended from the party. Christine Shawcroft defended a council candidate who posted a picture on social media which claimed the Holocaust was a hoax. In a letter to Mr Corbyn, they write, "This is highly offensive to the Jewish community and all those of us who wish to see the scourge of anti-Semitism eradicated. We urge you to suspend Christine Shawcroft from the Labour Party immediately, thus ensuring she is removed from the NEC." The main signatory, Siobhan McDonough, told me it's time Mr Corbyn led by example.
We've got enough words and letters to cover Nelson's column. What we need now is action. People are judged by their actions, and we need Jeremy to act.
Despite saying she is deeply sorry, Christine Shawcroft has also said that the row is being stirred up to attack Jeremy Corbyn, although she later retracted that from her statement. The problem is accusations of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party simply haven't gone away, and many feel that until decisive action is taken, it will continue to damage Mr Corbyn's leadership. Emily Morgan, ITV News at Labour Party HQ.
The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has said the party needs to do better in the fight against anti-Semitism, as 49 Labour MPs and peers signed an open letter urging him to suspend a leading Momentum supporter from the ruling NEC. Christine Shawcroft, who was forced to resign after opposing the suspension of a candidate accused of Holocaust denial, claimed the whole anti-Semitism row was being stirred up to attack Mr Corbyn. Simeon Brown has more, and just to warn you, his report does contain anti-Semitic imagery that some of you might find offensive.
It's easy to denounce anti-Semitism when you see it in other countries, in other political movements. It's sometimes harder to see it when it's closer to home.
Jeremy Corbyn's Passover message was meant to renew Labour's fight to root out anti-Semitism following protests, but it's being overshadowed by calls for a member of Labour's ruling executive to be kicked out of the party. In a long week of protests and statements, Christine Shawcroft resigned as chair of the committee meant to be enforcing the rules of the Labour Party. Just days ago, it emerged that Christine Shawcroft had supported a candidate suspended for making this post that had called the Holocaust a hoax. But in a public post on social media, she said she had not seen the original post and said that this whole row is being stirred up to attack Jeremy Corbyn. That statement has not gone down well with everyone. Over 40 of Labour's own MPs have already added their names to a letter asking Jeremy Corbyn why his close supporter was still allowed to be in the party and on its ruling National Executive Committee.
This has never happened before. Holocaust denial in a party like the Labour Party, in any left of centre party, in any mainstream party in this country, that has not happened. It's only on the extreme fringes of the far right that we've seen this before. For this now to enter the Labour Party is really uncharted water. It is a new low.
Jeremy Corbyn was already under pressure over this anti-Semitic mural. He apologised for a post made several years ago where he appeared to question its removal. Now, even Jeremy Corbyn's Jewish supporters are critical of how the party is tackling anti-Semitism.
There will be some people, of course, who will never be happy with Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. I mean, that's a given in a political party that's been defined by a civil war. But we can't let people use anti-Semitism as part of that. There's no excuse. Jeremy Corbyn can't be perceived, or the Labour Party can't be seen to be anti-Semitic, and it can't be either. Taking that weapon away from people is what needs to happen, and the way to do that is to stamp it out.
So you still have faith in Jeremy Corbyn's ability to deal with this issue?
I think Jeremy's got a point to prove in the next few weeks and months. I genuinely believe that he has the capacity to take this on. I think the party wants to.
But that challenge has haunted Corbyn's entire leadership. And with Jewish members and voters losing faith, what can Jeremy Corbyn now do to persuade critics that anti-Semitism has no place in the party?
Well, a short time ago, I spoke to the Labour MP, Siobhan McDonough, who wrote the open letter to Jeremy Corbyn, and to Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi from Jewish Voice for Labour, a group supportive of Mr Corbyn. Siobhan McDonough, Christine Shawcroft said that the row is being stirred up to attack Jeremy Corbyn. Is there a point to that?
No point, because Jeremy doesn't believe it's been stoked up to attack him. He believes that there is a problem with anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and in his 4 statements this week, he has said he's going to be militant on anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and we're simply saying, please live by your word.
Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi, Jeremy Corbyn has now accepted that there is a problem of anti-Semitism in Labour under his leadership. You accept that too, do you?
Now, as far as anti-Semitism goes, of course, we are, as Jewish Voice for Labour, adamant that anti-Semitism has to be dealt with. And in fact, we have been consistently doing that at the grassroots, in meetings, on demonstrations, for years now. And if this were all about anti-Semitism, I would be with Siobhan. I would be signing that letter. But of course, it isn't to do with anti-Semitism at all. You only have to look at the people assembled outside Parliament on Monday to see Tories and DUP people and very extreme right-wingers.
Are you saying that there is no problem with anti-Semitism in Labour, then?
No, of course I'm not. There's a problem with anti-Semitism throughout society, and what I'm saying is that there are ways of dealing with it. And Christine Shawcroft is passionate about trying to do that. She made a slip-up which she has confessed to, and unfortunately felt obliged to step aside from her important role as chair of the disputes panel. But for people outside the party to intervene and suggest that Jeremy Corbyn should go way above his brief and sack her from the NEC, which is an elected position, is completely unacceptable. You know, there are processes in the Labour Party that desperately need reforming, and that's what Jewish Voice for Labour is all about. We want proper procedures so that anybody who is genuinely has a problem with anti-Semitism will be re-educated, and if they cannot be re-educated, then they will be removed. That's clear.
Siobhan McDonagh, it's an attack on Jeremy Corbyn. This is not about anti-Semitism, it's politics.
Well, the demonstration on Monday, I don't know if you were there, Cathy, but the vast majority of people were there were Labour supporters in the Jewish community who said enough is enough. They'd made representations to Jeremy, they'd asked for things to be done, and at no point had they.
Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi says that it was Labour MPs allying with the Tories and the Board of Deputies.
The Board of Deputies and the Jewish Labour movement have many Labour Party members in it, but they also have people of no party politics. They were representing the Jewish community, hundreds of whom were on the square, saying, we want a resolution of this problem. We want you, Jeremy Corbyn, to address it. Now, he has said this week that he wants to address it. And we're saying, give us evidence, show us that you're going to do that. I mean, we had a Labour Party candidate who denied that the Holocaust existed, who was being defended by Christine Shawcroft. We had this only today, we've had somebody suspended who repeated a phrase over the Auschwitz death camp.
Let me put that directly.
Makes you free. I mean, this is unimaginable.
Unimaginable, Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi. This is about Holocaust denial. It's not about politics. That was the gist of what Siobhan McDonagh was saying just then.
No, OK. If someone is a blatant Holocaust denier, they are out. If someone idiotically posts something which is about Holocaust denial for discussion, they're stupid and they have to be re-educated.
This goes to the fundamentals of why you're a member of the Labour Party. It goes to the fundamentals of whether the Labour Party should actually exist. Now, I've been a member of the Labour Party for over 40 years, and I joined at the time of the Anti-Nazi League and Rock Against Racism. The idea that we have people who are anti-Semitic, I mean, I can't get my head around it. The idea that somebody needs re-education, actually, that term frightens me. What sensible person would not know that they shouldn't post for a discussion something that suggests the Holocaust didn't happen?
Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi, this is far from one bad apple. I mean, there's the mural which started this whole row. What did you make of the mural?
I found it offensive now that I've looked at it in great detail. Now that I've looked at it and studied it and thought about it, but for Jeremy to
you only had to glance at it to see there were some very anti-Semitic tropes there.
I knew immediately that was anti-Semitic. I'm here because I don't believe that racism and anti-Semitism should be part of the Labour Party, and I think we need to take action. And Jeremy Corbyn agrees that we need to take action, and that action needs to be now.
Labour MP Siobhan McDonagh and Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi from Jewish Voice for Labour speaking to me earlier.